give me one shot here on a blue chip stock, believe me, Kevin, the only problem you're gonna have is that you didn't buy more.
Nobody knows if the stock is going to go up, down, sideways, or in circles.
What's going on, NBA Draft fans? Your boys are back, the Wolves of Ball Street, the Draftdaq NBA Draft Podcast. I am here, as always, with my co-host Albert Gim. Albert, how we doing? How we feeling this week?
I'm feeling good. I'm realizing I'm getting more and more jealous of the cool green screen behind you, and all the cool graphics you have behind you. I do want to give you a shout out once again, dude. Our intro video with the music and we've always heard it on the pod, but to see it with the video looks so cool. I just love everything that we're doing. But I'm feeling good. I do want to start off by saying I was very surprised by who you wanted to talk about today. You really hit me with a curveball there. I thought it would be somebody totally else. I really didn't think we'd talk about this prospect for a while, but I'm excited, man. I watched a ton of tape. I'm ready to pick your mind because I think he's going to be an interesting guy to talk about because I thought we'd be talking about him months from now, but here we are. So I'm excited.
All right. Well, so the reasoning why I pitched him, there's a few reasons, I think. One, we launched No Ceilings last week. And one of the things that we did for the launch was we collaborated with the whole No Ceilings team by breaking down each conference each day. And one of the things I noticed is he was a very popular prospect between a lot of the teammates on No Ceilings, myself included. So that was one thing. That got me excited about him. Two, I had watched his tape a little bit before we did the pieces and the previews, and I'm sure we'll get into how exciting he is as a prospect. And I think some of the other guys that we haven't hit for the preseason stuff, I think maybe we'll probably tackle some of those guys early on because we're getting close. We're starting to get some exhibition games going on.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of games that don't mean anything. Some highlights that look like they're playing against my varsity team. So I think some of those guys that maybe we didn't hit in the, over the off season, we'll hit earlier on. And I feel like Davison's a guy that we could hit now because we're still early enough that we could hit his high school tape. But I think that he could be a guy that's either going to really see a rise in his draft stock or see a complete even plummet.
Right.
So I just think there's a lot that could happen to him between now and whenever we cover him. So I figured let's do it now and see what happens later on in the season.
Yeah.
So we're doing
JD
Davison.
Let's do it.
Headed to Alabama. Will be 19 on draft day. 6'3", 175, which the weight seems like it could be low. With Chet, it seems like he was a little heavier than maybe you'd expect. Davison's brolic.
Yeah, he is.
He's brolic. Reported 6'4.5" wingspan. Not great. Not terrible. Not a minus, but he's not some super long dude. Senior year stats: 32 points per game, 11 rebounds, 5 assists. Gatorade Player of the Year in Alabama in 2020. He had one of those aforementioned exhibition games, so he's already played in college minimally. He had 19 points along with 7 turnovers in his debut. So let's get into the stock price. ESPN has him at 13. SB Nation has him at 21.
Wow.
Tankathon has him at 24. Basketball News has him at 15. Bleacher Report has him at 22. That's an average stock price of 19, and we are all over the place, Albert. All over the place.
Wow. Damn, 19. Okay. So Corey, I think the way that you started all this off with your explanation, I think was really good because This guy is, that's once again, just going back to my original point, he is such a volatile prospect that I'm still amazed that you wanted to do him now, which
Yeah.
I think is really cool because the trajectory that we were on, we're like top guys, top guys, top guys, the best of the best of the best. And then suddenly we throw JD Davison in here. And I think he is a really fun guy to talk about because unlike all the other guys we've talked about recently, there is real volatility to his stock. And so you're saying the average price of 19, that sounds really accurate for where we are right now before the season, because he could literally go anywhere. And so it's kind of like the Podfather Bill Simmons talks about, like when Vegas does not know the lines, they'll just set it to 4.5, and that's what they call the Vegas zone. JD Davison being at 19 is like being in the Vegas zone. We do not know how he's going to end up, and so him being 19 feels like the average stock price being a 19 feels absolutely spot on for me. And I'm really excited to keep talking about this with you because like even for our column for No Ceilings, he was not my pick. I had Ty Washington above him. So
Yeah.
I'm actually like oddly really excited to talk about this. But for me, 19 seems just about right.
And Ty Washington as the best prospect in the conference, he very well may end up being that. Davison, though, I definitely, a few of us definitely picked him. I picked him, and I think that there are just tools that he has where if you do get the version of him where it looks like he's peaking, it seems like those tools may be overwhelming as far as like, comparing him to some of the other point guards in the class. But I can't really complain seeing him have an average stock price of 19. I think that maybe a site like Tankathon at 24 is probably low on him. I even think that any of the like above 19, I feel like just taking a flyer on a guy like him, if you can get him at 19, I feel like the value is going to be great and beyond. Personally, I think he's going to be closer to 10 than 20 on my preseason rankings. I'm going to drop my, the first written version of the Draftdaq so we can actually monitor where these guys are starting and where they're finishing and the journey all throughout the year. And that'll be up on No Ceilings, I believe, on the 9th, November 9th. So I think a week from when we're recording. But I think he'll be closer to 10 than to 20. I'm not going to say that it's absurd or there's any reason that he shouldn't be there, but I think that he's going to be a guy who's probably going to be a lottery guy at the end of the day, because I think teams will probably end up betting on his athleticism unless something crazy happens. I mean, look, teams bet on Zaire Williams and his length and athleticism and size. And
in the top 10.
In the top 10, we'll see if that's a good bet or not. It's not a bet that we would have been willing to take. I still wouldn't take it, but to each their own. And I think GMs sometimes are just like, hey, everything breaks right. This could be big time. I think Davison's a guy like that. Now, we usually start with shooting with a lot of these prospects because we love shooters. Who doesn't? It's the modern NBA, right? Everybody needs to shoot. But I don't think that's where we start with JD Davison, because the second that you watch him on the screen, it's not his shooting that pops. This kid is a freak athlete. So, Albert, I want you to talk to me a little bit about the kind of athlete that Davison is.
Corey, I think his athleticism being the starting point makes a lot of sense, but also his athleticism pops so much that I think our conversation later with the comps is going to be really interesting, because he's a guy that gets you thinking about a lot of different people. Yeah. Because athletically, so the biggest thing that in my notes, I started off with transition. I wrote transition is the name of the game for JD Davison. This guy is an absolute blur in transition. And it's like, he's not just fast, but he has this kind of so on Sundays when you watch Kyler Murray for the Arizona Cardinals, when you watch him run, there's that kind of water bug, jitterbug energy to him, right? It's like he's quick and he's fast, but he's also elusive, right? But then also for his size, him having that compact build, there's a sturdiness to him too, even though he's that small. JD Davison is kind of like that for me. I felt like he was so damn fast, and jumped so damn high, but also had so much power and anger in everything that he was doing. It was honestly, it's intimidating. Like he's the type of guy that I would not want to be on the same floor as, and I never will be. I acknowledge that. I will never play basketball with somebody of that level on the same court. Actually, I should say never. You never know, right? Not that I would belong on that court, but
stranger things have happened.
correct. Like maybe I'll play in a celebrity game one day, right? A man
That's
can
what I'm
dream.
saying.
Right. But it you have to talk about his athleticism. The guy's unbelievable. He's really, really strong too. Like you talked about his weight, like 175 seeming low, seeming kind of low. His chest is big. Guy has a big old sturdy chest. And it seems like he uses it, but some of the dunks, Corey, and that's kind of where we have to start. Some of the dunks just made no sense to me. Like I just couldn't understand how he was getting. So he doesn't just jump high, but he gets up there really quickly. And then also he can stay up there. Like he's kind of a really fast paraglider sometimes. So that I'll stop there and I'll let you talk about it. But an unbelievable athlete, and it kind of has to be the first thing that you talk about with him.
Yeah, his balance is wild, and it's a combination because like you mentioned, like it's the power, it's the hang time, it's the smoothness. Like as a leaper, he kind of is unparalleled. I think in this class because I don't think there's too many guys who have that kind of just straight up bounce, and he's like we said 6'3", and it's not like he's crazy long, so he really needs to get up to throw down some of these dunks. He's like a power forward in a point guard's body.
Right.
Like that's how strong and powerful he is. Like you mentioned in transition, he's like I feel like a guard like I don't know in this class. Not that they'll play each other. Like I don't know any of the small like Kennedy Chandler. Maybe if they match up, like he's tiny, right? Like he's strong, he's quick, all that. But like I feel like it'll be like Derrick Henry running through people if they he tries to stop him in transition. It's rare, and I we love looking at like some elite tools at whatever it is, and I think that there are some elite tools that sometimes we convince ourselves are elite. Like sometimes with big men that are bouncy and really all they could do is be a dive man. Sometimes we convince ourselves that like, hey, they block some shots here and there and they can dunk, so they're like these really athletic prospects. And really, it's like, do they have kind of like NBA dime a dozen athleticism, or are they going to be an elite athlete when they step onto an NBA court in an NBA context? And I think that Davison's athleticism is going to be elite on an NBA floor. And that's one of the things that drew me to Jalen Green. And Jalen Green, he's had a tough go to start his rookie year. I don't think anybody should panic. We've seen he's resilient by how he bounced back from tough situations in the G League. We saw last season, Anthony Edwards start out really shaky, really rocky, right, and then he came on and hasn't slowed down since. So, but when I watched Jalen, I was like, wow, this athleticism is going to stand out no matter where he is. Now, the difference between Davison and Jalen Green is that Jalen Green, while he's bouncy, super quick, he's slight of frame. JD Davison's not getting pushed around, as an athlete. So I think he's a special athlete. And to me, that's what really intrigues me. And it's why I think he's going to end up going higher than 19.
All that is fair, Corey. All that is really, really fair. I'm not even pushing back. I just want to give kind of like a little bit of my fear in all of this. Yeah. Is that like, we put up like a mid-major preview today. We talk about like Max Abmas. How do you even pronounce his name?
Amos? I don't know. Yeah, someone.
I really thought you just said anus. But anyway, Max Abmas. I'm always really weary. I know you and I this is kind of one area where you and I differ a little bit, where I feel like you kind of have an affinity for smaller guards, and I have like I have some, reservations when it comes to smaller guards. And with Davison, I'm not saying that he's exactly like Dennis Smith Jr., but we saw what happened to Dennis Smith Jr., and that
Yep.
scares me a little bit, right? And
As it should.
ultimately, right, and ultimately, Dennis Smith Jr. is not even like my ultimate cop for him, but guys like that kind of scare me a little bit. Those smaller guards who are really athletic but can't ultimately kind of smooth out the rough edges and that type of stuff. So I hear what you're saying. The athleticism is scary. Like his affinity for windmill dunks is unbelievable, and he's crazy. Like between the legs in transition, amazing. Him going up for a tip dunk, awesome. Like all that stuff is really good. And you know what you mentioned before, that he's a power forward in a point guard's body, that was really good because I felt that too, but I actually felt that more on the defensive side, which we'll
Mm.
get to later. But yeah, man, I'm with you. He's a very, very special athlete, but I think things will get interesting when we talk about like the other aspects of his game. But I'm with you, man. He's definitely a freak.
Yeah, well, the aspects of his game, like one of my questions is like, is he a point guard? Like, is
Yes.
that something he even is? And now, quickly, before we go back, with Dennis Smith Jr., I was not a Dennis Smith Jr. guy.
Same.
He does fit the bill as far as like, is he going to be an elite athlete on an NBA floor? Like, obviously, he does elite athlete stuff with a lot of his dunks and whatnot, but he's smaller than Davison.
Mhm.
He's like what, 6 foot? Is he?
Maybe.
Maybe.
Not sure.
Like Davison, if Davison's a legit 6'3", and he doesn't look small out on the floor with
That's true.
his strength and power, it's a little bit different. In the previews we did for No Ceilings, like I said that I'm being cautious about an early assessment on Kennedy Chandler for the same reason. He looks really tiny on the floor.
Hmm.
The athleticism popped, the speed, the playmaking. I think the shooting is, it'll be pretty okay at the college level at least. I think that going into the season, I certainly like him better for that Tennessee team than I did Jaden Springer, but he looks small. And so I'm also weary of the small guard thing. Now you could say
Hmm.
like I was, standing hard for Davion Mitchell, but there's to me Davion was always bigger than his height
Hmm.
because he was as strong as a small forward
Hmm.
and as quick as somebody who is that height. So he
Right.
had this rare blend of speed and power that worked. I don't think Davison has that same speed that like a guy like Davion does, but I do think he's bigger and he does have that strength. And then obviously the
Hmm.
bounce is otherworldly. But the skills is going to determine whether is this guy going to be 19 or is he going to be a guy that ends up being picked like eighth and he's the first point guard taken off the board. Because the point,
Yeah,
I think right now the point guard crop is very wide open as to who is going to be the best point guard.
that's
So,
fair.
but is he a point guard at all? Talk to me about his feel, his playmaking, just the things you want your point guard to do.
Okay, so for me, when it came to his passing, my initial reaction was, I think he has this like big desire to make really flashy passes. And you see that. Like you can see him kind of shifting his head away because he's anticipating to make a really wicked no look whip pass.
Yeah,
You get a lot of those. You see him kind of, you know, hesitating and like hanging his dribble, trying to wait and let things develop for him to make like a really flashy pass. But I don't think he's naturally like a gifted passer. I
mm,
think this is discussion that we had a couple weeks ago about prospects and players overall who are just innate facilitators, innate playmakers, innate passers, guys who can feel their teammates, guys who are looking to pass, guys who are excited to pass, guys who really enjoy that. I don't get that from Davison at all. But at the same time, I don't think I'm also saying that he has like tunnel vision. So
mm,
for me, I think it's good that he has the desire once in a while to make a really flashy pass. But the one thing that we know, Corey, that obviously you can speak to is that a lot of those flashy passes that these high end players are making in high school are not available in the college or NBA level at all. Like those are not going to be there at all. And NBA level defenders are going to be able to read that stuff. They're going to know when that stuff is coming. But at the same time, like, what I wrote here is I don't think he has tunnel vision, but I also don't see him averaging 10 assists per game like ever.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like, is that really bad? Like Dame averages like 7 assists a game.
Yeah.
That's pretty good. That's a pretty good thing. But I also got the feeling, Corey, one last thing. I also got the feeling that like sometimes it was like he was passing more out of necessity, like as like a lifeline.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with his evaluation as a passer, I think.
Yeah, I think that's an incredibly fair evaluation. I mean, like you said, like I don't think that he wants to pass first. I don't know in this version of the NBA if that's necessarily a bad thing. I think that we're starting to see a shift maybe towards guys thinking that passing is cool again. Like obviously with LaMelo, Josh Giddey. Granted, these are these jumbo playmakers. But I don't know if you look at a lot of the NBA guards, how many of them even are that traditional kind of let's get into the offense and run our sets kind of guards in the NBA with a wide open floor. And maybe it ends up looking a little bit better than maybe it's going to look like in college. But, you said like in the NBA, a lot of those flashy passes won't be there. They might not be there in college either. They probably won't be. And
Right.
I mean, look, I didn't watch the first exhibition game. I don't know if it was even televised or not, but if just looking, through the write-ups on it, 7 turnovers in an exhibition game versus talent that's not going to stack up against the kind of teams that he ends up playing against. That's a lot. That's high. And maybe sometimes, you're running at LA Fitness or whatever court you play at, and it's pickup, you're going to smash a team. You start trying to get creative. So maybe you get a little loose, a little sloppy. And maybe when the competition's a little bit better, you don't try to, showboat as much and you're actually playing a little bit smarter. So maybe there's a little bit of that too. But even still, 7 turnovers in any game is a lot for a guy that you want to theoretically run your offense in a traditional sense. So it's going to be really interesting to monitor that part of his game. What about his shooting?
So what I wrote here is his shooting grew on me. Yeah, I think initially I had this bias as soon as I started watching him. I was like, oh, this guy's not a shooter. Guy's not a shooter. Like, I think I'm some like shooting genius or something. Like I know prospects are going to be good shooters or not. Obviously, I've been so wrong about prospects. Shouts to Tyrese Halliburton. But
Yes.
like as soon as I watched him, I'm like, get out of here. Not a shooter. This kid's just an athlete. He knows he can get by anyone in high school. That's all he's going to do. And then I watched his like state title game from like a year ago or 2 years ago, and I was like, oh, maybe he deserves a little bit more credit. I once again, like, I don't think he's going to be a Dennis Smith Jr. type of shooter. From what I saw, like the shooting was there. Like he's not a terrible shooter. I wasn't watching him shoot going like, oh, that's disgusting. Like there was some promising stuff, and he was not shy about it either in a lot of the games that I was watching. So I think for shooting, I wrote his shooting grew on me. I don't think he's a marksman by any means, but I also don't think he's Dennis Smith Jr. is how I ultimately feel. So he's kind of like in between for me. I think he's like an all right shooter. I don't think that's going to be his calling card ever. So it's funny, Corey. The more I talk about him, the more I think like if he can really hone in his athleticism and some of the wild, because we haven't talked about him driving to the basket, which is something that I think we should talk about. But anyway, if he can kind of hone in some of that stuff and can keep working on his shooting, like we've seen Derrick Rose work on his shooting and later on in his career, I think Davison can have a pretty good NBA career, but I definitely don't think he's a marksman by any means at all.
No. And I mean, it's apparent he shot it really poorly in like the 2019 EYBL season. But like you said, it's not a broken shot. It's not ugly. You don't look at it and just cringe and go, this is going to be a process. You could see that. I think that he's a guy that like, hey, you better get up on him because he will pull it and he's capable of hitting it. Now, I almost feel like, and this honestly, this isn't one of my comps, but like Drew Holiday is not a marksman.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But he's going to knock down shots, and he's not a guy that you go under on. You'd rather, force him to, settle for like a tough mid-range shot than just settle for a clean open three. So I think that Davison might end up kind of the same way. Like, he's not going to be a guy who's shooting 42% from three, but if he can get to 36, 37%, he's enough of a threat to now open up that driving game, getting into the paint, getting to the hoop, where maybe he could use his strength, his athleticism, put pressure on the rim. So I think for me, that's why I wanted to start at the shooting, because I think that that's going to open up the dribble drive game for him.
Yeah, I think that's really fair. I definitely agree with all that. Yeah, like a part of me also does wonder if he has like one season where he shoots like 28% from three.
That wouldn't shock me.
Yeah, exactly. Like I hope our listeners don't take this as me hating on him, but like that's just kind of where I'm at with his shooting. I think there is a possibility that he keeps working on it and he gets better, because as you mentioned, it's not broken, it's not gross. I freaking hate Devin Vassell, because I remember that draft season and I watched him shoot. I was like, that's disgusting. No, that's gross. And then now you watch him and he's so smooth. And I'm
Chip
just
England.
like, F you. I know. It really is Chip England. I want him to teach me how to shoot. But it's unbelievable how much he's cleaned that up. And so, yeah, I mean, Davison might be another guy like that, where maybe he gets into the league and he finds the right shooting coach and he cleans the things up. I don't remember who the shooting coach was on the Hornets that helped AD, but I remember reading about that years ago, that, they helped AD move the ball away from his face, and like it really helped him as a shooter, and he really blossomed in that. But anyway, if Davison can find a coach like that and clean that up, then he does get really scary. But as we kind of transition, Corey, I did want to ask you what you thought about his driving, because in my opinion, I thought it was a little hit or miss, and I was kind of surprised by that.
Yeah, I was going to use the word erratic, because it's a processing thing, I think. I think that obviously the ability to get into the paint, use his first step, use his strength, is there. It's all right, I'm in the in-between. A help defender slid over, and now what am I doing? Am I getting to the rim? Am I making a play? Am I shooting a floater? It's the decision-making when guys actually rotate. Now, part of me thinks like a lot of times in high school, there's such sloppy rotations that sometimes it's like you're not expecting the player to be in a different specific position. It's a little sloppy, and you're learning as is. In college, I think, obviously guys will be a little bit smarter in their rotations. You'll be able to game plan a little bit more. You'll still see zones, but you'll probably see a little bit less than you do in high school at times. And there's just more advanced things that you can learn from being a part of a college team than you are in these high school or AAU situations. And man, his AAU team was really fun. Him, Jabari Smith, Matthew Cleveland, fun team. Terrible to watch because it's AAU basketball, but theoretically a fun team. But yeah, it's what's he going to do when he gets to his spots, because he won't have trouble getting there. But for me, it was the decision making, and sometimes he made the right decision and it looked fucking awesome, and sometimes he didn't make the right decision and it's like another turnover. So yeah, erratic.
Corey, it's really interesting you brought up Jabari Smith, and I know we're going to have that episode one day, but watching him play with Davison, sometimes I was like, is this guy good at basketball? Like, the hell am I watching? Like, I was having very visceral reactions to some of the stuff he was doing on the court. I was like, this guy's kind of bad, but I mean, let me wait. I just didn't like some of the stuff he was doing on the court, and I was like really confused by him and all the love that he's getting. But look, I haven't watched enough of Jabari Smith, so I will wait till that time comes.
And you'll have
But
more meaningful film when that time
I
does
will.
come.
I will. It's just I was kind of baffled by some of the stuff he was doing. But anyway, Davison, I 100% agree with you. I think him attacking the basket was like a real hardware, software type of discussion where he has the hardware where he can get by anybody essentially. He's got a good enough handle, right? I think his handle's strong enough.
Yeah,
He's
for
got the
sure.
first step, he's got the burst, he's got the speed, but it's the software stuff. As exactly like you mentioned. I feel like I can't even fairly give him a grade on like his in between stuff because I don't feel like I saw enough of it. I don't feel like I saw enough of him putting up floaters or
Mhm.
pulling up for mid-range shots. I just saw him either shooting a three or going straight to the basket. And Corey, one thing that I want to say is I felt like he was really pressing the issue when it came to attacking the rim. I felt like he was really forcing things, and that kind of annoyed me at times. I'm like, dude, like, can you kind of learn to pump the brakes, learn to kind of mix up speeds? Like I wrote about Jordan Hall. I don't remember if that was yesterday or today or whatever, but those savvy guys who don't have the athleticism, they know how to mix up speeds and change pace and stuff like that. And I feel like that's something that Davison has to work on and develop, because from what I saw when he was attacking the rim, he was kind of like a bull in a china shop. He was really trying to make stuff happen, and it wasn't always the prettiest. So yeah, I did want to say that I feel like that's something he really needs to work on, because sometimes it got really messy. So you saying erratic, that sounds really accurate to me, because it got kind of gnarly at times, and I hope he figures it out, because we saw like BJ Boston last year, Zaire Williams last year. These guys, when they went to the rim, it was pretty disgusting. It was really bad, and I'm hoping that Davison doesn't run into that issue. And so actually, Corey, I want to ask you, because I truly don't know. Like I've never played at that level, so I have no idea. But how does a player or a young player like Davison, how does he work on that? Is it simply just playing more, or like what are some things you can do coaching wise to have a young player develop in that in between game?
Honestly, I mean, obviously the skill stuff, like, that's obvious for anything. It's
Mhm.
repetitions, putting yourself in drills where you can mimic a certain situation that
Mhm.
you want to improve on. But at the end of the day, everybody's doing that, right? So to me, it really comes down to like film. Like, are you going to watch and
Mm.
be able to learn from the situations? In high school, a lot of times with film sessions, it's it's the kids think it's boring. It's like
Yeah.
attending a lecture, and if the wrong person is speaking, it is
Mm.
boring,
Mhm.
right? So, but you have to want to watch film, and it can't just be, hey, I want to watch film so I could see the cool stuff I did on the court. That stuff you need to kind of be like, all right, this is what I did, this is what worked, and this is why it worked. But you really want to look at the stuff like, this is what went wrong. Why did it go wrong? And then
Mm.
not just hear why it went wrong, but like anything else, if you were learning algebra, you sometimes need to ask questions like, what's the purpose of doing this? What's the next step? Basketball is the same way. I think
Mm.
basketball is such an easy game to understand. Once you
Mhm.
understand it, it's like, which doesn't, make sense. Like, obviously anything you understand, once you understand something, it seems simple enough, but like basketball is so complicated until you
Mm.
recognize the patterns and go, "Oh, everything's the same."
Right. Right.
And that's just going to be reps and experience. And
Mm.
that part of the game, it's like, how do you know? Like, you don't know. You don't know if he has that or not until you see improvements over the course of a season. If things get
Mm.
worse, or the processing speed doesn't improve, then it's like, all right, there's no way you're like really grinding film on your own with assistant coaches. You might just be sitting in film sessions. You got to want to do that stuff. And that's the stuff that is boring. And sometimes it's easier to just be like, oh, let me go get in the gym. But you need to really
Right.
watch it so you can understand, because you need to see it with your own eyes. It's funny, like we had, probably the best player going into my high school season, which starts in a couple of weeks. He broke his toe, like probably missed like the last 3 fall league games.
Okay.
And, he was sitting next to me on the bench, and he was just like, wow. He's like, now I know why you guys yell at us. And I said, yeah,
Mhm.
because we
Mhm.
see it all. When you're on the court, you don't necessarily see everybody messing up or one person blowing up the entire play, or the running back slowly effort, or just barreling in, and the breaking out of the offense, all the little nuances. I was like, yeah, you could see it from a different lens now, because you're not sulking because you're not playing because you're hurt. You can't play. So now you're still engaged in the game in a way where you're actually trying to watch it instead of playing it. And sometimes that offers a new perspective when you actually have your eyes open that way. And I think that that's how players really get better. It's the understanding and the IQ. And I think film, the skill stuff, everybody does. Everybody's going to want to do it. You're on the court, you're playing, it's fun. But can you bring that in, watch the film, and then kind of be like, you know what, now I know what to do when I get to the spot, because I know that person is going to be open in the corner or cutting to the hoop or whatever the situation arises. So I think that is how you get better. But I think that it's also one of those things where everybody's an individual, everybody's different, everybody learns in a different way. So it's really up to the player.
Dude, I think all of that is so interesting, and it kind of gives me like inspiration and makes me want to see if maybe we can integrate some like tape breakdown even on our pod, just because I remember I was driving home. Actually, this was just yesterday. The Knicks and the Raptors were playing, and I was driving home, and I had the NBA TV telecast playing in the car. Now, folks, this is not me being an irresponsible driver. I had it playing, but I wasn't watching. I was driving safe. I drive 40 miles one way just to get home. So I was just playing it, but I
in
heard
LA.
in LA. Oh God. But anyway, I think it was Candace Parker and Isaiah Thomas, and they were talking about the Raptors and the defensive concepts that they run, and the whole like nail heavy stuff that they run to keep the offense from attacking the rim, but also that leaves them vulnerable to like the weak side 3-point shooting and stuff like that. And they kind of accept that, right? And they can accept that because they have these long, lanky, athletic wings that they feel like can recover to the weak side, or can recover to like a skip pass or a swing pass or whatever, and can get out there and contest 3-point shots. But anyway, Corey, I think all that's really interesting. And I think it's weird, not weird, but it's interesting to think about a guy like Davison, and will he be able to watch the tape and pick that type of stuff up? And maybe that's something that we should do too, and maybe break down tape, and because that's something that I want to learn more about as well. Like, how are these guards when they're attacking the rim? How are they reading the weak side help? How are they reading the big? And what are some things that the bigs are doing to kind of show their hand as well? I think all that stuff is really cool. So anyway, that's why I wanted to ask, because I wonder how players develop in those areas. So
yeah, and like we said, we'll see how he develops, and maybe he comes out of the gate and he's just awesome right away. Or maybe he's terrible. The only way is to figure it out is going to be with time, but we don't know. We, at this point of the season, I know I haven't spoken to anybody from Alabama who knows what's going on with him. So the only thing that we can do is wait patiently and watch and see with our own eyes when we get the opportunity to get our eyeballs on some film. But yeah, we'll now that we got the whole no ceiling setup and everything, I think we'll definitely be able to integrate new ideas and different pieces of content that I think will help everybody get better at this evaluation thing and learn, and it's going to be dope.
Yeah.
Defensively, talk to me about your first impression of him on the defensive side of the ball.
Well, the first thing that I wanted to say is his team in high school was tiny. Like, what the hell was that? Like, why was his team so small? Like, I know he didn't play prep, and he was just playing like a local high school. So maybe that's why. But like, I felt like his teammates were freaking small dudes. And like, my heart kind of went out for him, because you mentioned it before. I'll bring it up again. You said he's a power forward in a point guard's body. And I was like, watching him play, and I'm like, well, they didn't really give him a chance to be anything else, huh? Like, he was really getting down there. He was constantly boxing dudes out. I saw him protect the rim a ton more than I ever thought I would. He was just defending around the rim so much. And I was like, God damn, like, this guy is 6'3", and he's going up against like monsters. But to his credit, he was holding it. He was holding it down. Like, there were some really impressive blocks. Like, he might be the angriest shot blocker I've ever seen in my life. Like, there are a couple where he was like tomahawk dunking on blocks. Like he was like cocking back his arms just to destroy some shots at the rim. And I was like, wow, like this guy is angry and pissed off. But I was really, really impressed with that. But ultimately, Corey, what I wrote here is I still need to see more. He clearly has the athleticism. He has an awesome build. I actually didn't know his wingspan numbers until you told me, and I actually thought his wingspan was kind of decent. Like I felt like he was using his length pretty well when it was like blocking shots or trying to like tip some passes and stuff. But in my mind, just from the limited tape that I saw, I felt like he has the potential to develop into a pretty good defender. Now, I don't think he'll be able to guard up to the 3, but like 1s and 2s, I feel like if he keeps honing his craft as a defender, I don't see why not, because he did a lot. Like he was asked to do so much in high school, and I kind of respected that part of his game.
Yeah. His size should allow him to do that. I actually think that physically, you're not going to start him on threes, but I think that physically he has it in him to hold up against threes on switches.
Okay.
And now you really want to be scheme versatile, right? Like that's what the ideal player is in today's NBA. You want to be a guy who can not only guard your spot, but guard multiple spots. And I think that Davison is somebody who just physically with the tools, he's going to have the capability to do that. Like you said, we have to see more. In high school, those overwhelming skills are just sometimes enough to kind of just get you through and not, you don't have to think the defensive side of the ball. The defensive side of the ball is really tough. It's really hard to figure out rotations and stuff. It's harder, I think, than figuring out the offense, because the offense, you're dictating it, right? You're making the decisions a lot of times. You know where your options are, and you could simulate the reads that you're going to need to make. Defensively, a lot of times, even if you scout, these players aren't going to remember every single part of the offense. This is not the NBA playoffs. These are going to be, one game college games. The scouting is not nearly as in depth because you're just, you don't get to see the same thing over and over and over and over again. So defensively, you have to, adjust on the fly as the offense is dictating where, certain things are going. Now, again, it's pattern recognition. And a lot of times defensively, like they're very simple concepts that if you don't sell out and get caught up into it, you can kind of figure out fairly easily just by doing it a bunch of times and getting those playing time reps.
Right.
Especially, as we said, if you're actually watching the film. But, we're not going to get that watching high school film a lot. It's a lesson in futility to guess unless you're actually watching one of these kind of, big time defensive prospects that you just know they're going to be legit from, Jump Street. But physically, he's got the tools. I think he moves the right way. He's a very smooth mover. So I'm interested to see what he looks like. And I think that Alabama's the type of situation where, they'll expect him to defend. So I think that he's going to be one of these guys where, like you said, he'll get the block. He's going to get steals, and it's going to lead to that transition. He wants to run. I love that he rebounds. 11 rebounds a game in high school.
Right.
For, a guard is tremendous. And, the last part of defense is getting the ball so you have it on offense. And I think he's going to be a really strong rebounder. And I think that rebounds are even easier to get in the NBA. And when, with all the extra space, like you get it and go. And that's going to be something that's beneficial to him. But as far as like breaking down what you saw, yeah, he's able to stay in front of high school kids and,
right.
And whatnot. But in yeah.
I mean, his rebounding was very Cole Anthony-esque,
Cole Anthony, man. White hot right now. I mean, Anthony, again, with the rebounding, but just everything for Cole Anthony right now.
Yeah.
You're too Cole.
Mm-hmm. Oh God. Yeah. But yeah, I agree with everything that you said. We just need to see more. That's all it is. And it kind of sucks that we've been giving that answer for so many of these prospects right now. Like, we got to see more, we got to see more. And I'm sorry, guys, if you're listening right now, like, this is not a cop out for us. It's not like we haven't done our homework. It's the quality of play that we had to watch of them in high school and AAU. Like, that stuff is garbage.
Yeah.
It's really bad. And so please understand, we will have more insight on them defensively, but we need to see them play against like real competition with real structure and format. So yeah, I'm with you all the way.
All right. I think that we can finally get to our comps. So if you're buying stock in JD Davison, who may you have bought stock in previously?
I saw on our article for No Ceilings, I think it was Nathan, he compared him to Colin Sexton. I think Colin Sexton was more gifted as a scorer.
Yeah.
Like, most definitely. But I think the comp with Colin Sexton is interesting because I think he has Colin Sexton bull energy. He's angry like Colin Sexton is angry. Colin Sexton is angry that people don't call him the GOAT already. That's the type of angry energy that Colin Sexton has. And I said
Yeah.
already, like, it's going to happen one day. It's not going to happen. I think Colin Sexton's excellent, but he's not going to be the GOAT.
No.
But I think JD Davison has that type of energy, the Colin Sexton anger. Like, he was so freaking angry in the games that I was watching him play. Like, I worried about him a little bit. Like, he's a young guy. Like,
Yeah.
enjoy life, brother. Like, take a chill pill. Like, life is not that serious, but he's serious, man.
He got some
when he's
chips
on the
on his
court,
shoulder, man.
oh yeah, big time, big freaking chips. He's angry. He is ferocious. So that's where I saw the Colin Sexton comp. Obviously, I mentioned, Dennis Smith Jr. before. I think that's fair. As you mentioned, DSJ is smaller, so I think that's fair as well. The guy who came to mind to me, I don't think Davison has the same handle that this guy had, but I'm going back to my 90s again. Don't hate me, early 2000s. I'm going to Steve Francis, the franchise. The reason why I say Steve Francis is because there's some similarities to their games, man. Steve Francis was unbelievable in the dunk contest, and I hope people don't just remember him for that. But Steve Francis was a guy who was a really gifted scorer. Like, he was a freak athlete who had great handle. If you go back and watch some of those highlights, man, the stuff that he was doing to guys
Crazy
with the ball, unbelievable. So yeah, there's that. But also, Steve Francis was a limited scorer as well. He wasn't a fantastic shooter. Once he started to lose his legs, we saw what he did with the New York Knicks. That was freaking painful. We even saw it
Not
at
the best
tail end. I know that. The tail end with the Magic before he came to the Knicks wasn't always great. So that's where I kind of landed. Obviously, it's not a perfect comp. None of our comps are. But I thought of Steve Francis because there's a lot to like there. There's some really tantalizing ability as an athlete and with a mentality and all that stuff. But there are also limitations to his game, which make me very weary of him as a prospect. So that's why I went with Steve Francis.
Yeah, tantalizing is a very good word to describe him. And Steve Francis certainly was as well. My comp, going back to the same era, and I think for the same reasoning, and I put it in my article, I see a lot of Baron Davis in him. Because it's another guy who, you want to talk about like dunking ability and bounce. Like, Steve Francis had it, but Baron Davis was putting you, like, he's burying you in the court. Like, he would dunk on you, and that thing he would just destroy you, annihilate you. He had some of the most vicious dunks ever, and he was another guy that was built like a big man as a guard. He was just jacked and brolic and strong, and the combination of speed and power was so impressive to see. And he wasn't a great shooter, but he was a great get my shot offer. And a lot of times that led to some really impressive volume scoring. And I think that now he'd have been a little bit more appreciated in today's game, and I think it would have benefited him a little bit more. I think people thought that the volume was a little high back then, but if you just implanted that to today, I think the shot diet looks a little bit more enticing.
Right.
but still, you never think of Baron Davis as a knockdown shooter. He was a guy that was able to use that shooting and the threat of that shooting just enough to get into the paint and do what he did best, which is attack the rim and be a really crazy shot maker. And passer. I mean, his passing, he had some of those same highlight passes, but you would never think of Baron Davis as having control of the offense like you may think of, a more traditional point guard of the time. So I think that's very, very top end outcome for Davison, if he could be Baron Davis.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's attainable. And but like you said, you also mentioned Dennis Smith Jr. a couple of times. And again, I think that maybe he theoretically has a higher floor because he's a little bit bigger, but you see, he's one of the more volatile guys we've discussed in a very long time.
Yeah, man, 100%. Now, honestly, you bringing up Baron Davis has me like thinking about like the old school Hornets, and I'm thinking about like David Wesley and random people.
David
But anyway,
Wesley.
hey, when's the last time you
Loved
heard
it.
David Wesley? Right? Okay.
It's been a while in conversation for sure.
Bobby Jones. But anyway, sorry. Yeah, I'm with you, dude. I think the BD one's really, really interesting, and it kind of makes you think of like a lot of those guys. And you know what, Corey, as you were talking, and you were talking about like the shot, volume, and sorry, not the volume, but like the diet and where they'd be taking a shot. A guy like that who I was thinking about recently is like Monte Ellis. Like, I wonder what Monte Ellis would look like now. Right? Maybe a little less of the mid-range and more three-pointers. And he was so good at finishing at the rim too. But anyway, I'm with you, dude. Like he's a bigger guard. Like he's a little chunkier. He's not small. He's not frail. He's got a big old chest. I think he's going to do well for himself. So I definitely agree with you. But ultimately, I think, Corey, you and I really agree. There are questions that he needs to answer. And I don't even think we're asking him to answer all of them in college, but I want to see him start to answer them and start to address those questions. And if he can, then I don't think it's crazy at all from my perspective. Sorry, not that you were saying that either, but I could see him move up in the top 10 as well. And maybe I'll be more aligned with how you're seeing him.
Yeah, that's it. I look at, if we're going to do preseason rankings, I think now's the time to project upside a little bit heavier. Once we actually see these kids play in college, you really have to rein yourself in as far as being realistic as to what their potential outcome could be, what their median outcome is going to be, and what's the likelihood that they exceed the median outcome. Now, preseason rankings, we can kind of have fun and look at potential and say there might be other guys that have a better control of the offense and whatnot, but ain't nobody has the elite athleticism from the guard spot that he has. So that's kind of what I see in him, and why I think he's volatile, and why I'm a little bit higher on his upside than a site like SB Nation, Bleacher Report, Tankathon is preseason. Yeah.
I'm 100% with you. Also, I want to correct myself. I think I just said Bobby Jones before. I was definitely thinking of Bobby Phills. So not Bobby Jones.
But I feel like I did have a Bobby Jones conversation recently. I think maybe he's doing something with the Kings.
Oh,
possibly. I don't know. I'm not sure. But anyway, yeah. So I don't know. We got one segment left.
Okay.
So I'm going to need you to sell me this pen on JD Davison.
Here we go. JD Davison. Obviously, he is a prospect that you're interested because you're listening to this pod. He's a guy that is an unbelievable athlete. He might even grade out as being the best athlete in his draft class. Who knows? I'm not saying he is, but he might. He's that type of athlete. He's a freak athlete. He's a guy who has the tendency to throw a flashy pass once in a while. He's a better shooter than people think, or that I thought. Maybe I'm just talking about myself. But he's a pretty decent shooter. And I think that's something he's obviously going to work on, because I know that he has aspirations of someday becoming a very good NBA player. So I just, if you're interested in guys who are freak athletes, guys who kind of start with a higher floor than other guys in his draft range, because not his draft range, but his draft class, because he's such a freak athlete. Then you should be interested in JD Davison. And I think some of the soft skills that we were talking about, I think, as the season progresses in college, if he works on those and he develops in those areas, then he becomes a very, very interesting prospect at the top end of the draft as well.
I love it, and I cannot wait to watch JD Davison. So I think that wraps up the episode. And Albert, let's let everyone know where they could find Garbage Time Gim.
You can find me at Garbage Time Gim on Twitter. You can find me at Alberto Gim on Twitter as well. I'm living two lives, but it's okay. I'm happy with my choices. Before we go, though, I do want to give a shout out to Corey and his hat. And his snapback, because I think the brim of your hat is green. So it's really cool. For everyone who's watching on our Spotify video pods, I hope you're enjoying how cool the brim of Corey's hat is. But also really proud of what we're doing at No Ceilings NBA. I was able to contribute on a couple of them, not all of them. Life has been busy, but our team is awesome, Corey. I'm really excited about all that. I'm also, going to be a guest on a pod this week, which is really cool. Shouts to Draft Capital. I'm excited for that one. And that's pretty much it. But also wanted to plug your stuff, dude. I watched your Rooks video and you were talking about the jumbo playmaker. And I thought it was cool that you threw that in here in our pod as well, because I think you're right. It really is the wave. And so everybody, make sure you go check out Corey's stuff on YouTube. That Rooks stuff has been awesome. So wanted to give you a plug as well.
Yes, thank you. I appreciate that. I cannot wait to listen to the Draft Capital episode that you're on. It's going to be a very proud moment. Watch Rooks episode 2. Hit a bunch of really fun rookie prospects from the week that I thought weren't getting a ton of love. Well, some of them were. I think Josh Giddey's been getting a decent amount of love, but Franz Wagner has not been getting enough love. So go and check out episode 2 of Rooks on the NBA Draft Dude YouTube channel. I'm getting pretty good at this green screen thing, so I'm excited for the film session, because I've said it a couple of times, I'm fucking the game up. But yeah, check out No Ceilings. You can hit up No Ceilings NBA on social, noceilings.substack.com for all the written work. Subscribe to it, go straight to your email. And we're writing some really fun pieces. We did all the previews. I did a write-up immediately reacting to the first G League Ignite game that you could find, touching on what Jaden Hardy looked like, Marjan Beauchamp, a couple of Dyson Daniels. Nathan wrote about LaMelo Ball last week. We got some really fun pieces this week. I know Tyler Metcalf and Nathan are doing a collaboration on Anthony Edwards and Jaden McDaniels. It's going to be fun. And Tyler Rucker is going to be doing an international thing. I think Nick's doing a Marcus Bagley piece. It's going to be a lot of really good stuff, and we're putting out content every single day on No Ceiling. So make sure you subscribe to that and follow us on social platforms. And you can follow me at Corey Tulaba on Twitter, and you can find all of the things we just talked about there. Really exciting time.
Yeah,
I'm going to the Champions Classic next week. I mean, we're getting there, man.
That's sick, dude. Really quickly before we go, I just want to say one thing. For our listeners out there, if you ever doubted us, right, you're kind of iffy about our evaluations about prospects, I just want to say we're not perfect, but go back to our Franz Wagner episode last year. Okay, go back to that episode, and then go watch Franz Wagner play in the league right now, and then thank us later. Because Corey, Jesus Christ, like the way that we talked about Wagner and the way that he's playing in year one, which honestly, Corey, even I'm surprised, because how high I was on him.
You loved him. Very.
I think we both loved him a lot. And so for our listeners out there, if you've ever doubted us, go back and listen to that pod about Franz. This is me kind of, we're going to take a little lap here and say that, we told y'all about this guy. So just wanted to throw that in there before we go.
been absolutely balling. And that's going to do it. We're out. We're rambling at this point, but worthwhile rambles, I would say. But thank you, everybody, for rocking with us through the off season. We're getting so close. I mean, literally, like I said, the season kickoff at Madison Square Garden is happening next Tuesday. I'm going. It's going to be phenomenal. I can't wait to watch these teams and scouted in person to see, have that experience already. Man, exciting times ahead. The off season is over. We're here. Here
we go.
Thanks for rocking with us, guys. We out. Peace.
Peace.